So we're replacing all the belts on here, and you undo, loosen that nut or that bolt, and where's the other one? See right there in the middle, right by that line. Loosen that one, and I think the compressor should move now. Let's go back up top. You're also going to need to loosen the adjuster bolt, which is right there. Now I think, yep, it's moving now. Probably going to have to loosen that nut a little more. It's 10 millimeter. Still haven't put the vacuum pump back on, but I figured this belt is going to be easier to do with the vacuum pump off. There we go. We'll slip the new belt on there. Well, not yet. We need to undo the alternator. So the alternator is gonna have it's got an adjustment screw right in there, and then it's gonna have a bolt that you're gonna have to loosen. Looks like on the back side of the bracket. Yep, it's on the back side of the bracket. So undo. I don't know if you can see my finger down in there. Right where I am. There's a nut you have to loosen. Feels like about a 14 or a 15 millimeter. So you're just gonna have to get a wrench in there and loosen that up. Once that's loosened, you might have to loosen the pivot down here, which is a bolt. We might be able to, on the alternator, do without it. If you can see this right here, that's the end of the bolt. The head of it is on the back side of the bracket, on the back side of the alternator. And there's not a lot of room back there, so we're going to try not to have to do that one. And you can see they were running a single belt on this. This is a turbo, so it's supposed to have 2 belts on it, and I've got 2 belts. And they're running too wide of a belt as well. It takes 2 narrow belts. They're probably running the belt that was designed for the non-turbo, which would have been a single belt. So let's get that off. Actually, I'm going to do the hoses and stuff as well, and I've got a thermostat to put in it. So I think I'm going to go ahead, and while I've got, I think it'd be easier to get to if I go ahead and take this thermostat housing off. Since I got to take it off anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pull that off to do the hose, or to do the thermostat and the hose, and that'll make it easier to get to the belt. And you can see why I went ahead and got new belts, why I had all this open up in here. It's a lot easier to work on. So if you're doing anything with this vacuum pump and your belts are old, you might as well put new belts on it while you've got all this room to work. Alright, I'm glad I went ahead and did this because they were not running a thermostat. So we're gonna have to clean this housing up. These bolts, I don't hold much hope for them. The bolts may be okay, but this one's an odd one. That one should not be in there. I meant to get, when I was at the junkyard, grab a couple of these bolts. I may have to go get some. This one is not the right bolt, and you can see it's tapered, and that would not catch a lot of threads with the taper like that. And I don't know how many threads we have. I'm gonna get a tap and see how good these threads feel. If they're not good, then we will need to if they're not good, we'll need to re-tap them. Probably to the next size up standard would be our best bet. They're metric right now, and probably tap them up to a 3/8 or something like that, or on the 3/8 head, whatever the 1/4 inch bolt, probably. Yeah, might tap them to a 1/4. So let's go ahead and get this alternator done, alternator belt, and then we'll have to clean this up. It's pretty dirty, and see if we can tap that. What I should do is go ahead and replace this hose here. I don't know if I've got a piece of hose I can put in there, but now would be the time to do it. I guess I'll leave it for now, and we'll see about doing that later, I guess. So let's because I don't have this thermostat housing gasket, the one where it bolts to the head. Yeah, I don't know about that hose. We'll see. So let me get this cleaned up. Continuing on with heater hoses, I went and bought a piece of hose for this. It's 1 5/8, I think, reading online, but I'm not sure about replacing it. I need to take this thermostat housing off from the head, and I tried to get one of these bolts out, and I'm afraid they're gonna break. So it's not leaking. I think we're gonna leave it alone. And another thing I decided to do, most likely this is like an auxiliary water pump, and it's supposed to circulate water for the heater, mainly I think when you're at idle, supposed to make the heater work better at idle. This is Texas. I don't need much of a heater, and these are expensive and they go bad, and then they can also leak. So, and the heater hose that goes to it is this weird crooked thing, and that's so the engine, because it's a straight shot, pretty much straight shot, but it needs some give to it, so the engine can go. If you just did a straight shot, it'd be pulling on it. But what I can do is that heater hose is like $32. That's cheap as I can find it. So instead of that, I'm just going to go from there over to there. We're going to bypass this thing. Like I said, it probably doesn't work anyway, and I think we're just going to go ahead and unbolt it and pull it out. The car in the junkyard that I was pulling parts off of didn't even have one. Went straight over to there, and I think like a 240D wouldn't have had one. It would have went straight over. Their heaters seem to work okay, so we're gonna just go without one. And they had this valve in there, I'm pretty sure, because maybe that mono valve's not working, but it is open. So I'm not sure why they put that in there, but they don't have it closed off. So we're gonna pull that out. We don't need it. If the mono valve is not working, if there's something wrong with it, we will replace it. Not replace the mono valve, but rebuild it. You can get a rebuild kit cheap for it. It's like $7, I think. on Pelican parts. So we're gonna put a heater hose in there. That's 5/8. That kind of looks like 3/4, but we'll stretch it over and get it on here. I think we can. Alright, so while I've got that off, I don't think I'm going to be able to get that hose on there. I'm going to have to put a little piece of 3/4 inch heater hose there with a reducer, which is no problem. I don't have one right now. I'll have to pick up one, but should be able to get one at Lowe's, just a 5/8 to 3/4. But yeah, so we'll do that, and then you pretty much have to take this intake boot off the turbo and the air cleaner to get in there, get back in there. It's 17 millimeter back of the alternator to loosen the alternator up. So I've got that loosened up, and I popped the water pump pulley off just to get it out of the way. It was just hanging in there loose, so I'm going to put that back on, and we'll put the 2 alternator belts on. Then we can put the AC compressor belt. Well, then we can start cleaning up over here. I've got paper towels stuffed in there to keep crap from getting in the pan, getting in the engine while I scrape that old gasket off. So why don't we go ahead and scrape that off, and yeah, kind of multitasking here. You know, easy to get all this stuff done while you're doing a bunch of other stuff on the front of the engine. And like I said, I'm going to leave that bypass, that big bypass hose, because I do not want to break off anything in the block. If I end up having to do a water pump, it looks like that is made onto the water pump housing here. There's 2 parts to the water pump. Looks like it's made onto this housing part for this bypass thing. So I would try undoing it here if I ever have to do a water pump on it. This water pump's good and tight. So I don't want to break it's not leaking, and I don't want to break off one of those bolts in the head. So I'm just gonna, and I don't even have a gasket for it. So I think until we need to do something here, or if it's leaking, I doubt, it's such a short little piece of hose, I doubt it would blow out. Could, but I kind of doubt it. But I don't think that's worth getting into right now. So let's get the hoses or the belts on it, and then, well, clean that off first while we got all this stuff out of the way. Then we'll put the belts and get the after we get the belts on it, we'll get the vacuum pump back on it.